There will always be shamanic wars happening within the universe, but the Jedi know that the greatest war of them all is happening within the mind, within the body, within where all of the consciousness coalesces and creates the outcome of everything we experience here on the planet Earth.
So it is a Kitty Friday, and I'm very, I've been thinking a lot about astrology because I've been reading so many people's charts, and someone contacted me on through my YouTube channel, and then shared some information about studying, about their use of the different house systems. And of course, that opened up a whole personal study into them. I had already been looking into what they, like, how they were determined, but I hadn't really taken the time because it is a huge study to look at these things. You have to spend the time looking at the details. And so, of course, I went to look onto some astrologers' channels who have done the work, who do great research. Chris Brennan is one of them. He really goes into details with a lot of this stuff. I recommend looking at his channel. I'll put it up right here. He did a study. This is his channel right here, the Astrology Podcast, episode 227. And it is, this one's titled The Origins of House Division Debate in Ancient Astrology. He, does really good research and explains things very well, goes into detail. If you're into details, he's got the info for you. And so, like many of the things that we've studied, when you go into detail and you're looking, searching back for records on where things came from, where ideas originated from, we'll notice that, paper doesn't survive for that long. If you've gone to the jungle, you know that it basically melts after like 2 rain seasons. And so over time, how information has been shared has been through mostly people, interested in that topic, who are specializing in that topic, writing critiques. So reading other people's works and then writing their own kind of critique on that work. And then that's often the most updated version of anything we have, or the most recent critiques on previous works. So it's always a little convoluted, right? It's kind of like playing telephone. What was originally written by our distant ancestors is nothing like what we can see today in our information, and the authors that are writing about anthropological studies and trying to obtain the oldest text on anything. We do have things that were written in stone, and then we have the issue of translation. Everything is always layered by our modern day perception because we are living in a completely different reality than our ancestors lived in. And so there's all these layers that we have to go through. But either way, the point is when something piques our interest, we go back and we try to get as much information as we can about it. And so Chris went back and he has many questions that he answers about the debate, and he shows how basically our modern day Western Hellenistic astrology coalesced with ancient Egyptian astrology, Their house system was completely different. And it was based on like deacons of separation, the 36 deacons. And we have the 12 houses. And then it shows, we know that certain people like Hermes, for example, wrote about the 12 houses. We can't be completely sure, but we're pretty sure because there's other authors whose works we have that make reference to different people in history who have written about this stuff. And so everybody kind of had their take on what the house systems are. And originally, systems were first based on like the cardinal directions, and then like the angles were the most important, as you can see here. And then, the decline and the sextant, would either be accentuated or it would kind of diminish that planet's effects. So I would recommend, like, if you're interested in the house systems, going to watch this video and getting the details for yourself. I think one of the important points is that people shouldn't associate the houses to a particular sign too much, because from what I understand, they're very different things. And so the houses are really, from my understanding and my interpretation, are the stages of development that consciousness go through after a person is born. So they're born, and then the first house, they're coming into physical being. And so that's why the first house has all of those attributes of, like, the person's physical appearance, like their identity in the world, like in a very physical, concrete way. And then, moving through the other houses, what all of these different thinkers tried to do were to map out very distinct stages of development that the person would go through in life. So depending what era you were born in, the house systems would look very different because the stages of development were very different. So we can expect to see an evolution in the interpretation or the definition of what these different house systems are. And the more that our lives are defined by different circumstances, like, changes the way our lifestyle is, and what kind of life expectancy we have, what our connection to nature is in terms of health and wellness, what type of work we're doing, will eventually alter how we define the house systems. And so right now, if we're looking at the house systems, let me get out of here, and I'm going to share I took a few screen grabs from Chris off of his video. Previously, the houses were attributed more to planetary energies. They were less defined, and they were more kind of abstract. So in just a photo, a picture like this, you can kind of see which planets were ascribed to which house. And then you have, what we believe the 12-place system of Hermes was. But again, we don't find any actual texts by Hermes with this from his own writing. We only find it mentioned that this was his through other people like Thrasyllus. And So this is, at that time, this was how they were distinguished, the house systems, which is very interesting. You have the good spirit, the good fortune, the livelihood. Like a lot of it is similar to what we have now, because certain things won't change. We can take all of this into consideration by looking at all these different older ways of defining the house systems. And this is Chris's latest. He kind of combines a lot of the stuff. So let me make this bigger. This is kind of like a general overview here of the house systems at their basic explanation, with a lot of the kind of overlapping, all of the ancient stuff, and so overlapping all of the ancient models and descriptions with the more modern ones, and so logically, I think looking at these things from like just questioning it ourselves, we take so much information for granted. Like we'll want to discover something and we'll go and look up obviously what previous thinkers have put together on the topic. But I find it interesting when I start to question all of, to question it for myself, like how would I create it? And, if I'm looking up at the stars and I'm mapping how the planets are influencing me in my life, throughout my life, what sort of stages like would they go through to when I'm looking, so that when I'm looking at my system, or when I'm looking at my chart, I would be able to understand that system and understand the development of, what it is that I am personally going through, like on an evolutionary basis, like a psychological basis, the evolution of consciousness, the evolution of my physical body, the evolution of my work, the evolution of my relationships, all of this stuff, my studies. I don't know if I said that, but so basically, just kind of questioning that. It would be interesting if people came up with their own house systems based on what they think the models of development are today. But the most basic we can look at is, I'm going to pull out an actual chart here. So let me stop sharing this. So I'm just going to share a client's chart and just describe a little bit about how I'm viewing this right now. And there's, the concept, if anyone's gone to my website, www.inspiringplayfulevolution.com, you'll see that a lot of the like the idea that I bring forth is that we're spiraling. So this is just like an innate knowing since I'm a child that we're kind of like, we're spiraling around, right, through space and through time. And as we spiral and we spiral through time, we're constantly returning back to basically the planets that were in place, in the specific place, where they were in the sky, determining that energetic imprint. And each time we spiral back around, like, with our solar return to that original spot, we are able to, we've gone through experience during that year, and then that energy and that experience culminates, and then we're able to kind of retrieve like a higher learning from that planet. And so as we're spiraling around, every year we go back and then we retrieve more information, more codes, from that, like that energetic imprint from our planets, like where they were in position dictating our blueprint. And so looking at the chart this way, you can kind of see, like, when someone was born, what kind of like planet was influencing their birth, was influencing all of the qualities and their experience around their birth. And you can also look at this like the first year of life. You could look at it like the first month. So this is where I kind of play around with correspondence. And it could be the first minute, right? And so looking at it like this kind of helps me understand a bit better, although I do wish that there were 13, because ideally, like, there's typically like 13 moons in a year and not 12. So this is where like the time is kind of, all our Gregorian time calendars are all off. But like generally, if you kind of like zoom out and then you look at it from a 3D perspective, you can kind of see like around, what time certain planets were influencing that person. And then each time this person spirals back around to their birth date, right, they're contending with this energy that was imprinted on them. So they can see how they've improved in working with that energy. And then you can also see these planets marking specific events in the person's life, right? So like, for example, right here you have Black Moon Lilith, right, in the fourth house, right? The fourth house is like, it's basically the underworld. It's our connection to the cosmic womb and our direct connection to our experience with our inner underworld, like with our connection to the dark feminine, and also our connection to our power to heal and nurture. And so, typically you would be able to see what kind of event happened in that person's life when they were either their fourth day, right? Because it's always going to be a repetition as it spirals around. So you have the fourth day, could have been the fourth minute, the fourth day, the fourth month. And sometimes, if you divide the system into 13, you can kind of see, okay, it would have been on the 5th. And then each time that person spirals back around, how have they contended with that energy? How have they improved in working and managing that energy? And so the house systems, and I think in astrology, this is called, I think there's an actual study of this, which is like progressions with the house lords and stuff like that, but I haven't looked at that, studied that fully. I'm not so much into predictive astrology as I am into the psychological aspect. Predictive astrology was actually, reading astrology charts was based on the idea that we didn't have personal will, right? We had the Norns, the 3 Norns that weaved our fate, and we were kind of stuck with that fate. And whatever would be in our chart would be basically what would happen to us in our life. But, and that was influenced a lot by the Stoics, as Chris mentions in his podcast. Stoicism was big during that time. And we're still, there's still certain constraints that we have, right? Born into a certain body, born into a certain place on the earth, a certain family. There's a lot of constraints. So it's not complete free reign. But there's a lot of things that we can change, especially when we do this type of work, and we can kind of use preventative medicine. But predictive astrology isn't for the faint at heart. Predicting someone's life expectancy doesn't really interest me. But some people are interested in that. For me, there's a lot, like what's inspired me and what's truly coming in. I went into a shamanic journey and recently, and I just I felt the call from my ancestors, and so I went in, and they were showing me through the tree of life a certain planet, and they were explaining to me that that planet in particular has a lot to do with my the legacy being passed on to me. And ironically, that's a planet that I've had to contend a lot with. I've kind of been, arguing an internal argument and dialogue with this planet because its energy just feels very overpowering for me. And, and the ancestors just kept on repeating, don't be afraid of who you are. Because oftentimes the parts of ourselves that we're the most afraid of are actually the parts of ourselves that our ancestors worked so hard to preserve and maintain, and to bring forth as our gifts to the world. And so looking at it as well in that terms, looking at how all of these different planets and their positions in our charts are really the culmination of not only our soul journey, but also our ancestors and our bloodlines journey. That's why it's interesting to look into the historical aspect of our names. I've just found so much information with my own names, but have also found information for other people through their names. But then looking at that, also juxtaposing that information over the person's birth chart. And you have to really have this 3D sight, right? Because when we're looking at a two-dimensional kind of everything's just flattened onto the chart, we can't really see the depth and width of things. So yeah, so finding, those power points in our charts, and then seeing where they are on our spiral, and then understanding that, it's also a stage of development. Each house is a stage of development within consciousness, within our psychological makeup, our psychological development, within our physical body, within more esoteric, our soul's evolution, and then seeing it from that perspective really kind of allows me to work with people from a multidimensional perspective. And then also just bringing this forth is the whole idea of not to take the house system, not to be so fixed with it, because when you look at the history of its evolution, it's a broad overview of things, and it's not, it's a broad overview of things, and it's not necessarily giving us, it's not based on anything super concrete, right? It's based on various people's conceptualizations of developmental stages, right? And then also through the correspondence with nature. And that's why the cardinal cross is so important, because it shows us on the angles, the most important parts, right? The first house, the fourth house, the seventh, and the 10th. And so, yeah, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to bring forth. It's kind of a little bit of a mishmash, but this is where I'm at with my studies. And, all of this stuff going on the planet right now is really also happening within us, right? We keep on, the Jedi know to go back within, and the shamanic wars are happening within. And we have to, I think part of my study with astrology is really learning, the battle within, and how all these different planets are clashing, and and also seeing like with my son, for example, how certain ancestral gifts were passed down to him, and I can see it specifically in this chart. So I'm curious about the listeners if they're also able to see certain patterns showing up in their children's charts. And also looking at things from that progression of like, what event happened in your life at, 2 months old or 3 months old that repeated itself at 2-3 years old, that then again repeated itself, 12 years later, right? And actually, I wanted to show you one last, I'm pretty sure most of you have seen the year Lord house chart, but this kind of gives like a general idea of what I'm talking about. And so if I share my screen here, we can see, this is how things cycle back around, right? And then this is actually mapped out according to age. So, you can just get a little chart like this and it'll show you when that planet is going to be back in that house and how old you'll be. So that's also very interesting to look at it, to have this to reference. But yeah, I've been reading so many charts, and I've been starting to ask people if they have had psychological issues during like that specific time, or that they had like a major event, some people have had like major events, major accidents, like crazy stuff happening to them. And it's marked right there in their chart. So we know that every year when that time comes around again, the trauma body is going to be responding to something that is no longer in the present, but had a timestamp onto our blueprint in the past, right? And so every time we're spiraling up, we are moving, like we're healing all of these different experiences, because if that happened, if that's in that person's birth chart, that one event, at 3 years old, that's something that connects to a previous life, right? Or it's something that connects to something in the bloodline. It could have been through the mother. And so we're having to heal like all of these wounds so that we don't bring that forward with us as we're spiraling up. And then eventually our spiral becomes, so cleared, like we'll just clear up so much of the trauma and so much of the density that we're really just able to use a lot of the higher, the exalted qualities of those planets every time we traverse them. So yeah, that's it. That's what I'm sharing for today. I'm wishing everybody a beautiful September. Should be interesting month and year. And I'll be back soon with whatever I'm studying on this crazy adventure next. And if you have any information you'd like to share about the house systems, just how you've been using them, things that you've noticed, and stuff like that, please go ahead. I'd be very happy to hear how you are using them. Okay, take care.